Well, I know we can spin this two ways. I'll start with this one here, Tyler, because I think both our gears are grinding right now.
Oh yeah.
But like one of the things I want to know is, again, like you talked about, you come up with the Pirates. It was a bad team, right? It was a bad team. You said it yourself. Your words, not mine. It was a bad team, but it went through a whole rebuild. Obviously, there was much success.
It was a bad team.
There was success on the other end of it, right? The 3 playoff runs and such. But what maybe similarities, or what do you see maybe in this team, and maybe compare it or contrast it to, what you went through in those years?
Well, I feel like the core is getting close to being put in place, and by that I mean, Andrew was up earlier than I was in 2009. I got up at the very end. I didn't really get an opportunity to play until the following mid-late May. So Andrew at that point had basically solidified himself as a bona fide major leaguer, which everybody knew that was going to be the case. For me, not so much, because I didn't really have a position going into 2010. But when I transitioned and got an opportunity, there wasn't many pieces that were solidified. And I talked a little bit about it last year at the beginning of the season. Going through the season, I said my biggest takeaway from last year's Pirates was that by the end of the year, if you look around the diamond and you have 3 or 4 cornerstones in place going into the next year, and hopefully 5, you're going to have a pretty good chance to add around them in the right way. And on our case, with myself and Andrew, and then a couple years later with Garrett Cole and Marte and Polanco, all of a sudden you got 4 or 5 guys they're in the lineup every day. You're in the lineup every single day, for the most part. And then you look around and you go, okay, Garrett Cole, he's a higher end starter. We're going to supplement him. We're going to take a shot on Liriano and AJ Burnett, and we're going to bring in Russell Martin to help as a veteran catcher. All of a sudden, these little you have these pieces that are stuck, and you're taking some of these chess pieces and you're starting to put them in place. And of course, when I was there, we were always platooning pretty much right field and first base. Those were our 2 spots. Everywhere else in the diamond, you got Clint Barmas that handed it off to Jordy Mercer at shortstop. You had Pedro playing a pretty good third base at the time. You got Marte in left. You got Kutch in center, and you got Polanco a little bit later. But Garrett Jones and some of these guys were platooning, and then they were platooning at first base. So you're looking at essentially 6 out of the 8 guys in the National League lineup at the time with the pitcher. The lineup didn't really change. It may have maneuvered a little bit, but it didn't change. That is so important, in my opinion, in everyday baseball, because if you got 2 or 3 spots that you're platooning, and you're trying to get young guys at bats, undoubtedly, at least one of those platoons is probably not going to work. And if you're, for instance, if I'm a young guy trying to get set in the big leagues, and I'm a switch hitter or a right-handed hitter, and I have 200 bats in the big leagues, and they tell me you're going to face only lefties, and you're going to come off the bench off of lefties. Well, you're thinking to yourself, well, this guy can handle lefties, but if he's facing lefties once a week or twice a week for starters, and he's getting 2, maybe 3 at bats, and then when the righties come out of the bullpen, he's pulled out of the game for the lefty platoon guy, or vice versa, he's not starting for 3 or 4 days, and then all of a sudden he's getting high leverage left-handers. I can tell you from experience, because it happened to me later on in my career, that's hard. That is extremely hard. So when I look at, let's take Rodolfo Castro, for example, right? He's one of the rare guys that, at least at this point of his career, actually handles the bat better right-handed as a switcher than left-handed. That's significant. But I think that it would be very difficult if for some reason they went into the season with him and Ji-Hwan Bae as somewhat of a platoon, which that may happen, it may not, I don't know. But if they were to say, Castro, you're going to just face lefties, and you're in my, this is solely my opinion, and I'm looking and I'm going, this is going to be very difficult for this guy to stay in tune with the game and stay in rhythm with his at-bats, and not getting at-bats for 2-3 days, and then going in there against a tougher lefty, and then facing late inning, 8th, 9th inning lefties off the bench. That's a hard thing to do. So I see some of these things, when I'm looking at some of these guys and some of these, the Sawinskis, the Mitchells, the Connor Joes, the Smith and the Jigbas, some of these guys, that are going to get opportunities. My biggest thing is like, you have your pieces in place. You have Key Bryant in there every day. You got Brian Reynolds in there every day. You got Kutch that's mostly going to DH, I would assume, but he's also going to play some right field. The continuity with some of these young guys, in my opinion, is so important. So my hope this spring training is if one of these guys, for instance, like I mentioned, the Castro and Bay situation, if one of these guys takes the bull by the horns in spring training, has a great spring training, playing good defense, I hope that they'll get an opportunity to kind of run with it from day one, at least of a sample size of a month, which is give or take 100 at bats, because that's how these young guys get comfortable in the major leagues. That's when a lot about these guys. You get to those 100 bats in a row, guys are going to start figuring it out. You're going to have to make adjustments on the fly, in game, in series. You start to see teams for a second time. Those things cannot be taken lightly as a young player and as guys trying to get solidified in the big league. So, a long-winded answer. I hope that by the end of this year, there's really only one or two more spots on the offensive side of things that either are platooned or just need to be tightened up, because I don't see it being far off.
So